Good evening, my name is Michelle Parker. I'm here to talk about developing self-regulation strategies for students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I'm going to go through my paper and read it for you, along with showing you some resources along the way. That's what we're going to be discussing today. Modern mainstream classrooms are compiled of various students, including those with learning difficulties and high-incidence disabilities. I have chosen to research self-regulation strategies for students with ADHD as the numbers have increased within Australia, with the last percentage recorded in 2011 at 11%. Statistical studies shows a higher incidence in boys than girls and revealed how boys scored higher on the hyperactivity and disruptive scale. Students may seem naughty, but with ADHD being a neurodevelopment disorder, students struggle with persistence and impairing development issues. This causes levels of students' inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and executive function to be inappropriate. Students with ADHD may also be dealing with the following comorbidities: oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, learning disabilities, and deficient emotional self-regulation. These disorders and disabilities diminishes a student's self-awareness and they can then reference themselves as having a low intelligence. Trabelsi and Zurel researched students with ADHD and found a normal range of intelligence, but that did not match their academic scores. Deficient emotional self-regulation is responsible for a student's impaired performance and can be confused with bipolar. This will be diagnosed as a comorbid disability of ADHD, whereas bipolar is a separate condition altogether. So what does this look like within the classroom? A student with ADHD may have trouble in class with disruptive behaviour, poor academic levels, excessive talking, difficulty awaiting turns, fidgets or squirms in their seat, difficulty paying attention, and difficulty with listening. And I need to update my reference there. Again, students may seem like they are misbehaving, but do not have the social understanding due to differences in brain anatomy and wiring. Therefore, students struggle with working memory, flexible thinking, managing emotions, self-regulation, and organisation and planning. The below picture demonstrates what self-regulation is. That's self-regulation to us. Students with ADHD struggle with self-regulation because of the issues with their executive and motivational functions. Their inhibitory control is low and affects working memory, which in turn affects internal information representation, forethought and planning ability, getting organised, managing their emotions. For example, if they do not understand something, communicating this to a teacher is difficult, and staying focused when disciplined is switched instantly. Thus explaining when they are not stimulated they find it elsewhere and may distract others in doing so. Beardman and co. have stated that developing self-regulatory strategies in students long-term is hard. This may be the case, but having short-term strategies available, a teacher can equitably assess their students. The following is an evidence-based program to encourage students with ADHD to become self-regulated, be active members of their classroom, and alleviate disruptions. This is called the If-Then Plan. It's an early intervention strategy for teachers who may have a student with ADHD in their class. The idea is to link a critical situation to a goal-directed action. For example, if is a promotion of goal attainment by emphasizing the specific situation in which the action needs to be altered. This will allow the students to use environmental cues to identify the next step. Then, what happens when the environmental cue is identified and the student follows the plan? An example of this would be, if I have something to say while the teacher is talking, then I need to raise my hand. A simple cue could be placed on a student's desk to remind them of their plan, as seen below. I've made it user-friendly, so it's got the teacher there, and then it's got what the student needs to do. The cue card states clearly the situation that may arise and the immediate action to take. This would only be the start of alleviated interruptions in the class, but the plan can be monitored and altered once the desired self-awareness is evident to the student. The teacher needs to not only explain the if-then plan to the student, but have patience as the student learns the process. So I've provided a few more expansions of the if-then plan. If I want to raise my hand with something to say, then it must relate to what my teacher is saying. If I do not understand what my teacher is saying, then I must ask for further assistance. If-then plans are like social stories, visuals, and material scaffolding, but concentrate on self-regulation through a student's self-awareness. I will demonstrate the use of self-regulated strategy development for a student with ADHD in mathematics, telling time. I use this as an example as students may measure time frequently subconsciously. The hypothetical student is in Year 4, is a young man and has an interest in playing PlayStation. This was based on my son. Whilst I have designed it for the deficit, the scaffolded approach can be used for an entire class and altered to cater for diversity where needed. So step 1 is developing background knowledge. I will examine my students' prior knowledge with a game. It will be like, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" But instead of walking several steps, students will run to a spot on a giant laid-out analog clock. I will ask students to stand at the small hands position for 6 o'clock and 2 o'clock, for example. Expanded versions would include working in groups to create alternative times, for example 3:15 and 5:45. And further again by asking about AM and PM. Here the vocabulary is demonstrated. This is a visual representation of a clock and a manipulative. I have taken students out of the classroom to an open area so they are not confined to the classroom. I will then discuss it. I have chosen telling time as it is a vital part of life. The student may be unaware that through authentic activities he is learning something. During the activity, I can use formative assessment to not only find out what my class knows, but have students peer teach about the importance of time through structured questions. I will make sure in the same lesson I emphasize the importance of time and relate it specifically to playing PlayStation and time spent on a console. Here I can create an individual student monitor form where he can record the time in a week he has played on the console. A record sheet will be provided to the student as the sample shows below. So what time I started, what time I finished, how long did I play for. Here the student can create a realistic goal of recording a certain amount of times written. He is self-monitoring and completing an authentic assessment. The student will model it. Before sending my student home with the task, I will set aside time to ask a student some questions related to thinking processes. I can assist the student. And here are some of the questions. Most importantly, can you explain to me what I'm asking you to do? And I only intervene if needed. Once my sheet is full, have I checked my work? Why is it important to fill in the sheet correctly? To ensure the data is correct. The task will be completed over a few weeks, allowing for me to monitor the progress and understanding, expand where needed, and provide alternative situations where my students may be telling time. This could be after getting home, how long until I leave for football practice, or how long do I get for recess and lunch. The important hypothetical lesson and homework is for my student to see how setting achievable goals and having work that is doable can assist with their learning. I do not require my student to recall word for word the process, but understand the step-by-step process they took to reach their goals. Once the student has completed their time-telling task, I can start using the process for other disciplines. With an understanding of breaking down an activity into achievable goals, my student and I can create charts for other activities. If my student feels comfortable, I may even ask him to demonstrate his strategy to his peers as a form of encouragement. Establish independent practice. I will monitor and assist where needed by allowing open communication and a safe-to-fail environment to my student. I will use praise and encouragement to my student to persevere even if he is struggling. Here I can remind them to look at their strategy list in their words and their end goal. A few other things I touched on is goal setting, self-monitoring, self-talk. Just wanted to have a quick look at the Sadira helpful thinking makes us feel better, and changing unhelpful thoughts to helpful thoughts. Whilst the program above may be sufficient for others, I have mentioned the use of goal setting, self-monitoring, self-talk, and self-reinforcement for students who may need further assistance. That may come naturally for me, but for a student with a neurodevelopment disorder, it needs to be taught. I do understand that each student is going to be different and will require diverse amounts of assistance. Each program needs to be monitored and amended regularly so the student can continue to learn and reach higher goals. Thank you very much.